is no longer fought by nations alone. When the power shifts into the hands of private companies, controlling armies not bound by any country's laws. In the 21st century, a new kind of force emerged from the shadows. A force that didn't answer to governments but to CEOs and contracts, and at the center of it all was the largest private military company in the world. In the heat of the Iraq War, one name struck fear into both allies and enemies alike. It wasn't a general or a government, it wasn't a country, it was a company, Blackwater. And the man behind it? Erik Prince, a former Navy SEAL with a vision that would change the face of modern warfare. At the height of its power, Blackwater was the largest private military company in the world, controlling an army of contractors deployed in the most dangerous war zones. This is the story of Erik Prince, the man who commanded the world's largest private army and built an empire in the shadows of conflict. Erik Prince was born into privilege. The son of an auto parts billionaire, Prince grew up in a family that was both wealthy and politically connected. His father, Edgar Prince, had founded one of the largest auto parts manufacturers in the country, and his sister, Betsy DeVos, would later become U.S. Secretary of Education. But Erik's path wasn't corporate or political, at least not at first. In his youth, Prince developed a strong sense of patriotism and duty. He joined the U.S. Naval Academy before becoming a Navy SEAL in the early 1990s. As a SEAL, he trained for elite combat missions and learned the value of teamwork, discipline, and strategy. Armed with his inheritance and military experience, Prince sought a new mission, a way to combine his tactical expertise with his entrepreneurial spirit. In 1997, Erik Prince established Blackwater in the swamps of North Carolina. His original vision wasn't to create an army. Instead, he saw a gap in military training. He wanted to offer world-class facilities where U.S. military and law enforcement agencies could train in realistic environments. With its state-of-the-art shooting ranges and tactical training centers, Blackwater quickly gained a reputation as the premier private training ground for America's elite forces. But the world was about to change. The events of September 11, 2001, turned Prince's small training business into something much bigger. The U.S. government launched the global war on terror. This new kind of war required more than traditional armies. The conflicts in Afghanistan and Iraq were sprawling, chaotic, and often required missions that governments didn't want to carry out publicly. That's where Erik Prince and Blackwater stepped in. The U.S. military was stretched thin, and the government began outsourcing many of its security and combat needs to private contractors. Blackwater seized the opportunity. Prince transformed the company from a training facility into a private military corporation offering security services, logistics, and armed personnel. In 2003, the Iraq War escalated, and Blackwater secured its most lucrative contract yet, providing security for U.S. diplomats in Baghdad. It wasn't long before Blackwater contractors, many of whom were former Special Forces operatives, were patrolling the most dangerous streets of Iraq, armed with the best military equipment money could buy. In just a few short years, Blackwater had grown into a private army. At the height of the Iraq War, Blackwater had over 20,000 employees, most of whom were contractors working in high-risk zones. While not officially part of any nation's military, these men were trained, armed, and often operated in ways that made them indistinguishable from regular soldiers. Blackwater personnel guarded key figures, provided tactical support, and carried out sensitive operations. They operated under contracts worth hundreds of millions of dollars, paid for by the U.S. government. Erik Prince's company had effectively created the world's largest private army, equipped with helicopters, armored vehicles, and advanced weaponry. But with great power came greater controversy. In September 2007, Blackwater was thrust into the global spotlight for all the wrong reasons. In Baghdad's Nisour Square, Blackwater contractors, while escorting a U.S. diplomatic convoy, opened fire on Iraqi civilians, killing 17 people, including women and children. The contractors claimed they were responding to an attack, but investigations found that many of the victims had been unarmed. The incident ignited outrage across the world, sparking protests in Iraq and condemnation from human rights organizations. The Nisour Square massacre became a turning point for Blackwater. The company's reputation, already questioned for its aggressive tactics, was now in tatters. Blackwater's personnel were accused of acting above the law, operating in a legal gray zone where they were neither accountable to the U.S. military nor to the Iraqi government. The U.S. Congress launched investigations, and in the following years, several Blackwater contractors were tried and convicted for their roles in the killings. The Iraqi government banned Blackwater from operating within the country, and Erik Prince's empire began to crumble. Following the fallout from Nisour Square, Blackwater rebranded itself, first as Z Services and later as Academy, in an attempt to shed its tainted image. But the damage had been done. By 2010, Erik Prince had stepped down as CEO and sold his company, distancing himself from the Blackwater brand. But Erik Prince wasn't done with private military ventures. In the years that followed, he quietly built new companies, offering similar services in other parts of the world. His focus shifted to Africa and the Middle East, where Prince formed partnerships with governments and private corporations, providing security in war-torn regions. At one point, Prince even proposed the creation of a private army in Afghanistan to replace U.S. troops, although this idea was ultimately rejected. Today, Erik Prince remains a controversial figure. To some, he is a visionary who revolutionized the role of private contractors in modern warfare, providing services that governments couldn't or wouldn't. To others, he is a war profiteer whose companies operated in a murky world of unaccountability, raising ethical questions about the use of privatized force. Blackwater's legacy continues to cast a long shadow over the private military industry. The Nisour Square massacre became a cautionary tale about the dangers of outsourcing war to private companies. And while Blackwater has long since faded from headlines, the debate over the role of private military contractors in global conflicts is far from over.